Jennings.
All right, we talked yesterday, Rob, and this story is worthy of addressing again.
Yes.
But we talked yesterday about the lack of African-American coaches being hired in a league that's 70% black.
And it's disheartening to all those guys who put in all the work, Chris, who want an opportunity to run their own team.
Yep. And Marvin Lewis, who is an African-American coach, obviously coached with the Cincinnati Bengals 15 years.
I was going to say, he had a long run.
I believe 7 playoffs.
And went 0-7 in the playoffs.
Yep. And he was interviewed by Jerry Jones. I doubt they had any – look, I like Marvin Lewis. I think he's a decent – you got to give him some credit for getting him to the playoffs. But obviously he couldn't get him over the hump for whatever reason. If Jerry Jones had hired him, he would have got destroyed.
No, there's no doubt about it.
That's just not the sexy hire.
And it's not about – because we've seen bad white coaches get other opportunities, so that's not – we're not here ripping Marvin Lewis. If somebody believed that, maybe this guy –
like if they hired Bill O'Brien.
Exactly.
You get killed.
Right. You know what I'm saying?
It's similar.
It's similar because
O'Brien gets them to the playoffs.
But he hasn't had a lot of success.
Right.
I mean, they did win their playoff game, but normally it hasn't been that great.
You and I said we would have fired him if they lost.
If they would have lost, I would have.
And again, I'd be like, look, you did a good job. You got us to a certain level, but we're trying to go higher. We got J.J. Watt. We got Deshaun Watson. We got great receivers, DeAndre Hopkins. We need to be better. But anyway, Marvin Lewis was on Golick and Wingo today on the other network, ESPN, and he talked about the rule. Rob G, summarize kind of what he said.
About
and
this
give
this
us
is about the Rooney
Right.
Rule.
He was asked specifically about not getting the Cowboys job, which he did interview for, and his response was, quote, "There's a lot bigger problems than myself out there. You keep beating your head up against the wall, but I would say, and again, this is somebody's business, this is somebody's franchise, nobody's going to tell them who to hire. But if we can just somehow open the process a bit more and provide a little bit more opportunity." Basically saying you can't tell them who they're going to hire.
I totally disagree, and I think Marvin Lewis, I know what he's saying, but we've seen things change when people are willing to put up a fight for it. We've seen the change, and we're talking about in everyday life. Chris, there was a time, and I'm not trying to be this heavy, I'm just telling you. There was a time you couldn't get served at the Woolworths counter to eat. And every day the people would show up and sit down at the counter day after, even though they said, we're not serving you, right? Every day until what? They would have dogs on them, water, throw stuff at them, spit on them, everything. You can make change. The players right now, Chris, can change this. It ain't that hard. I'm sorry. If you talk, and I'm just saying the Cowboys because that was the job he talked about. If you really believe that the Dallas Cowboys won't give people of color an equal opportunity, then that's not an organization I'm going to sign with as a free agent or I want to play for. Or when it comes to draft time, hello, don't draft me, Dallas Cowboys. I won't play there. We've seen guys do it all the time, Chris, haven't we?
Yeah.
Eli Manning did it. I'm not going to San Diego.
Right.
Don't draft me. You could do it. Was it Jim Kelly? I was thinking, no, who else? It was another quarterback. Oh, no. Elway, John Elway. Right? I'm going to go play for the Yankees. I'm not going because it was Baltimore, I think.
Steve Francis did it in the NBA.
Okay.
Wouldn't play for Vancouver.
Okay, and this is what I'm saying is I know what he's saying, that it's their team and you can't tell people what to do. But once there's a pattern where you say there's no opportunities for my people or people who look like me, that's not an organization. We just saw it down in Jacksonville. The perfect example. We think both Chris and I that the Players Association is terrible and weak in the NFL. But they finally did something, Chris, and we saw it. What Tom Coughlin was doing was wrong. The meeting is at 5 o'clock, Chris. I showed up at 5 minutes to 5. You're late. I'm fining you $500. I'm not late. Right? He was doing all that, taking money from people. The union put a letter.
For not being at voluntary
And what the union, they wrote a letter, right? And they said
told
what?
free agents, you should consider not signing with this team.
And then what did the owner do? Did they let Kaufman retire without it looking bad? No. They were like, you're fired right now. Right now. Because they also had to show the players that they weren't with that organization wasn't with Coughlin.
Look, I agree with a lot of what you said. Marvin Lewis is right. He, this is these guys' business, and you can't necessarily tell them what to do. You don't want a quota system where there have to be 6 black head coaches. You don't want something like that. It's just unfair. It's a shame that people won't judge you on the merits of your resume and what you've done. And they're clearly judging people by skin color. They can say all they want that they're not. They are. It's obvious. And here, to your point, Rob, I agree. The players could do. I just think African-American athletes have a responsibility to our people that they don't generally take up. They really don't. Some have individually here and there, but as a whole. And you say, well, why? First of all, a lot of whites may say, and I've heard white or black athletes even say, nobody's asking the white athlete to do this for the white community. Yeah, because we got entirely different histories.
Right.
Really?
They don't have to fight for their people.
Right. Come on. That's ridiculous. And we still are in different situations now.
Can I give you this?
And these black athletes will play that card when something goes against them individually, but when it's us as a people, the masses of us, other blacks, not just you individually, for the most part, we just turn a blind eye to it.
I'm going to give you 3 athletes who changed sports, Chris. All of them African-American.
And they changed it not just for blacks, but for all athletes.
All athletes. Right? Jackie Robinson, what he did just to get baseball and whatever to integrate it. Spencer Haywood, who went for the hardship that allowed underclassmen before. Remember, you couldn't do it. He had to fight.
To go from college
and went to the Supreme Court, right, to get it done.
4 years, yep.
And Kurt Flood, who now all the players who are free agents, he gave up his career, Chris, to be able to fight baseball to become a free agent when they used to own your rights your entire career.
Yep. And
you
Oscar
couldn't go
Robertson
anywhere.
Too.
And the big O.
In the NBA.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Here's what
These are sacrifices.
I don't think you need to. I would not advocate players in the NFL right now going against a particular organization because they're all in it. They're all essentially the same. Some of them have had a few black coaches. Some of them haven't had any.
I'm just talking about
the league. And to your point, what the Players Association did because of what Tom Coughlin was doing, they could do it. They could say to players, look, we need to take a stand. And again, you don't want a quota. You don't want to say the Cleveland Browns, your coach has to be black or anything like that.
You know what I would do?
But players could say, look, this is ridiculous. You can bring the data. And it's clear that there's racism going on, and you present that data and say, we're not playing or we're protesting in some way, shape, or form until this changes. There are black coaches, assistant coaches who've paid their dues and who aren't getting a chance, and there are white assistant coaches. And this is nothing against Joe Judge and Matt LaFleur and all these young guys and white coaches that are getting jobs. I'm not saying they're not qualified, and they may be great coaches. What I'm saying, though, is there needs to be fairness, and African Americans need to get a shot. What if I heard Nick Wright say this, so I'm going to give him credit, but he made a good point. Can you imagine if the National Hockey League, if 80% of the coaches were black?
I've said that for years, 100%. It's funny, because you would say, wait a minute, all the players or 95% of players are white. How could it be 80% of coaches be black? It would be looked at as ridiculous.
Right.
Okay, that's exactly what it would be. So his point is well taken, because it would be. It wouldn't make any sense the way you look at it in the NFL. And here's the other thing, Chris. How about if the union puts out a list and of all their front office people, who their scouts are, what the numbers are? Yes, to give me a gauge to say the and I go back from
a historical list. So now you know
now
it's
I'm
not
like,
just at this point in time.
Right. That the Cowboys have never had, and I know they have Will McClay, who's a very well-respected executive in there. So I know Will personally. They never
had a black coach, but they've only had a few coaches.
But I know he's in their front office, and I do know him. But I'm just saying, where you say they've only had one African-American in their front office in the last 30 years, or some sort of number to give you, and then you say the Carolina Panthers have had 15 African-American, including a Hispanic coach, and then you give them a grade that they have a percentage and that they are somewhere where there could be a future for you, Chris. You know what I mean? And other opportunities for you where these other places. And that's what it comes down to.
What we're asking the athletes to do is stop complaining and begging and use the power that you have, which is your athletic ability, your fame, your wealth, your connections to corporations in America. You have all that. African-American athletes are the most irreplaceable African-Americans in the country. They are. They're irreplaceable. And that's leverage. They could, as good as we may do, they could find some people of other races to do what we do.
Oh, yeah.
You can't find I ain't seen another LeBron James of another race. You know?
No, I got it.
And that's leverage. A Michael Jordan.
There is leverage, and you got to know how to use it. And you can talk about it. Chris and I, we applaud the football players of Missouri. Yep. What was going on down there? There was racist stuff is going on campus. What'd they do, Chris? Real simple. They're on scholarship.
Right.
They got their parents in school, right? Imagine you got kicked out of school. What would you go tell your parents? You had a football scholarship to Missouri. You got kicked out because you were standing up for a principal.
Right.
Right? And what did they do? They won. They won. We're not going to another practice. And they won. They got the chancellor and the school president both had to resign.
Should African-American athletes, football players in particular, use their power to address this discrepancy in African-American coaches getting passed over?
And you know, our show is a mixed bag of all things. We have a lot of fun on this show. We tackle a lot of issues. We sound different. We talk about more sports than most national radio shows, but we also tackle real issues when they come.
This is in the news.
And this is one of those. So sometimes, we're going to give it to you real and raw, and this is what you can expect.
Just like everything else. Just like when we talk about the game.
Right.
We're going to give it to you real. Keep it real. Keep it 100. Andre in the Cape. You're on with the Odd Couple.
Yeah, guys, thanks for taking my call. There's clearly an issue, and Rob, you hit the nail on the head. Until labor unifies, that's the players. Capital is going to be under no capital will not change once. You had a great interview the other day talking about power doesn't concede anything in and of itself.
Ever.
Point of fact is that here's what needs to happen. Players need to unify, not for African American coaches. We need African American ownership. The Rooney Rule was an absolute success. Why? Because the Rooneys believed in and supported Mike Tomlin over the years. John Gruden, 10 years. This guy Rule, 7 years. You bring an African-American coach in for 1 or 2 years, then you get rid of him. Here's my overarching point. Just like what Tyler Perry is doing, he didn't make a movie, he built a studio.
Right.
Okay? And so the movies and the films and the entire culture that's going to flourish under his leadership, you will see, because you have there's symmetry from the top down. Players need to come together for African-American ownership, which is what I think we're going towards a little bit with Jay-Z, and then you'll see these African-American coaches flourish across the board.
That's funny. I haven't heard from Jay-Z on this whole thing. That's interesting.
He should come out and say something.
Yeah, you working for the league now. I want to hear something from Jay-Z. Where's Jay-Z?
Let's go to Marcel in Mississippi. You're with Chris and Rob.
Hey, what's up, Chris and Rob, man? Good to be on, first-time caller, man, long-time listener.
Thank you.
I wanted to talk about this yesterday, man, because it was so deep, dude. And like y'all said, man, y'all speak on the real, man. Y'all uncut. Y'all talk about everything that the other networks won't talk about, man. And I appreciate y'all.
Thank you.
But I mean, I'm an engineer, man, and it's the same way in the corporate world, man. It's like for a young black man, man. you got to work twice as hard to get, sometimes half the reward at times, man. And, you almost got to succeed way past beyond your means at times. And I think the players should stand up, man, and not just, I wouldn't say sell out, but, come together for a better cause, man, and get more of us in there. And we can relate to each other better, man.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, and Rob, we see this, and it's in every business, journalism, marketing, accounting,
the
sports,
business we were in.
Who you know?
Chris.
Who you know?
I told you this. I'm not like some 75-year-old man. I know I'm getting older. But how about this? In Detroit, I was the first black sports columnist at the Detroit Free Press. Chris, when they hired me, you know how old the paper was? 161 years old. Is that outrageous?
That's not surprising.
Outrageous.
It's the history of the country.
Detroit Free Press, 161. Hey, Marcel, thanks for calling.
Let's go to David in Oregon. David, you're on with Chris and Rob.
Rob and Chris, good to talk to you guys again.
What's happening?
Y'all since day one, call in regularly, generally complain about my hogs.
Yes, we know. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. You were dead on about the Pats, but you got an apology letter coming in the mail from me about
I thought you got to send me wings or something. I tried to tell you about the Pats.
You come out to Bend, and I'll take you to a steak dinner, and I'll treat you real well, Rob.
Okay.
David, you giving him too much credit for
David,
that weak prediction.
For a free steak, I might have to fly out there.
I'm not giving him credit for calling anything, but, he was right that we didn't look great.
Finally, he's been saying this since 2012, literally.
Even a blind squirrel finds a nut.
Right. You know it. All right,
go ahead. What's your point?
But the issue, y'all nailed it on the head. You can't have quotas, but you have to look at statistics to determine how employers are complying with discrimination laws. And so you look at what's called disparate impact versus disparate treatment, but you can't have quotas.
Right.
And so unions obviously have to organize, but the issue becomes then, what laws do you enact other than those that are like the Rooney Rule, which is mainly aspirational, to require it when you can't order quotas?
Right.
Really, I think the solution is, one, to hire me as an NFLPA attorney. Use your sources. I'd be happy to help fix this. And then I think you have multicultural investigatory committees within each organization that sign off on these hires. You interview a minimum of 20 to 30 candidates, require, keep the Rooney Rule in place, maybe expand it a little bit, and then just go from there.
Yeah, good point,
Thanks,
David. And Marvin Lewis, made a good point where he said he actually, and you and I both are in agreement that if like the team's hiring somebody else and they're just bringing you in to comply with the Rooney Rule, no thought of hiring you, don't go.
Don't go to that.
But Marvin Lewis made a good point in that he would still tell, if it looks like it's a regular process, still tell African Americans to go for the experience of the interview. If it's legit.
Right.
But you need to get that experience
as
well.
That's why none of the black coaches came to Detroit.
Right.
Because everybody knew Mooch was already, Steve Mariucci was already hired. Would you have gone? Everybody in the league knew.
When you
right.
know you're not,
like there's no job. Right, there was no job.
Complying. Let's go with Susan in Florida. Susan, you're on with Chris and Rob.
Yes, I just wanted to call and tell you that I agree with you guys 100%, because I can remember when, back in the 60s, when people like Nat King Cole wasn't even allowed to walk through the front door at any of the clubs that he was performing at.
Yes, he had to come in through the back door.
Exactly. And I know that Benny Goodman, I think, was one of the orchestra groups that would not play any place unless he was allowed to walk through the front door.
And you know what, Susan? Frank Sinatra, too, wouldn't play certain Vegas clubs if Sammy Davis or black entertainers couldn't come through the front either. He was the same way.
Exactly, yes, because I can remember those days.
That's a great point, Susan, because I've said this, Rob, a long time.
Thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
You need, obviously, whites are 65% of the country population, and they have the overwhelming majority of the wealth. You need powerful whites to stand up in unison for these causes as well.
Tell me
what
what
rights movement wasn't all black.
No, tell me this. If there was a press conference and Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, and Drew Brees said Colin Kaepernick deserves a job in the NFL and we will not stand for that, what would have happened?
Oh.
Seriously.
He'd be in the league quicker than if the black players did it.
Am I right?
If those three said no question.
And that's question. There's no doubt about it, because the owners would be like, oh, my God, Tom Brady's just said.
No.
And then what would have happened?
Question.
And that's the other part. All right, let's do the Dre in Seattle. You're on the Odd Couple, Fox Sports Radio. What you got, Dre?
You guys are all good. You know that?
Thank you, man.
Oh, man. Listen, real quick, if I was a college player in the state of Mississippi, how can you play for a state that has that symbol in its flag? I don't see any black. That football is the worst.
I got to be honest, man. And Rob mentioned this yesterday, I think it was. We went to see Just Mercy the other night, and it took place in Alabama. And it was just 1987. And I got to be honest, I was sitting there like, man, and all these dudes are playing
for that school,
Alabama,
right?
making them this historic institution.
Hey, Dre, let me tell you this.
This is how they treating black people in Alabama.
When the Super Bowl was in Atlanta in the 90s, I don't remember exactly what year, they had the Confederate flag as a part of the Georgia state flag. All the black reporters covering the Super Bowl walked out of the press box and refused to acknowledge that flag during the national anthem. Players stood there and accepted it, but it got so much about the media and all that eventually it was removed from the Georgia state flag. But the players could have had that thing removed immediately.
No doubt. What's happening, y'all? It's Chris Broussard.
I'm Rob Parker.
And we are
The Odd Couple. Check us out as often as you can on YouTube.
And always remember, I'm Oscar and he's Felix.
Oh, man. Are you serious?